You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast. As always, this is Daniel Barrett here from AdWordsNerds.com. And look, as always, if you need help getting motivated seller leads and deals online, that's all we have been doing for over a decade now, people. AdWordsNerds.com is the place to go, whether you want to get someone to do it for you, whether you want to learn to do it yourself. All right. Man, this week I have a fun conversation for you this week. Do you know Geary? Are you familiar with this guy? If you are not, Geary is the man behind Novation Nation.com. But even more than that, Corey is one of the most refreshingly transparent and self-aware real estate investors I have ever met. Like, so many people will have some kind of version of their entrepreneurial story where, yeah, they struggled and then they made good. And it's always great, right? I mean, it's great to hear somebody's story of triumph, and that's awesome. But Corey really shares what it was like to not just try and fail, but as he describes it, try and get his skull cracked open. Right? I mean, this is a guy who has been through it. It's a guy who has had a past with a lot of downturns in it, but has worked consistently over time to acknowledge his own shortcomings, build strategies to mitigate them, and has been wildly successful. I will tell you, there's a lot of people who share their entrepreneurial story, but it's not always super useful because it's hard to put yourself in their position because they're so far ahead of you, right? I mean, this is just a common thing. But Corey really tells this story in a way that I know is going to connect with you. Fascinating guy. Tons of topics we get into, how he got started. We talk about being a Blackjack dealer. Did you know that Blackjack dealers make six figures a year? I mean, it's true, right? We talk about that. We talk about the time he lost everything. We talked about how he got into Novations, and I was using Novations today, basically completely took over his real estate investing business. And finally, at the end, we talked about what he's doing now, which is crypto, which is, look, 2 years ago, everyone was doing crypto. Not a lot of people are doing crypto now. Man, this is a fascinating conversation. I cannot wait for you to check it out. So without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Corey Geary from NovationNation.com. I have this week Corey Geary from NovationNation.com. That's Novation Nation.com. We're going to talk about that quite a bit coming up. But Corey Geary, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on here, man. It's truly a blessing and honor.
Yeah, I have been wanting to talk to you for a little while. We've been talking about Novations at AdWords Nerds for, I don't know, it must be like a couple months now. Lou, who's on my team, sort of brought them up to me, and we got clients that are doing them and having a lot of success. And so it's been this whole thing, like, what is the deal with Novations? And Lou was like, well, you got to talk to Corey Geary. He's the man. He's going to sort of walk you through this. So I'm super excited for this. Before we dive all the way down that rabbit hole, for people who aren't familiar with you or your work, kind of zoom out, give people a 30,000 foot sort of overview of you and what you do today.
Yeah, so 30,000 foot overview is I used to be a blackjack dealer in my past life, and I did that for 16 years in a casino, making pretty decent money, over six figures a year. You make tips, right? It's like similar to like being a bartender. And so it was tough to leave that job. And I did that for a long time, and I was able to save up a lot of money. And that's how I got into real estate, because I was watching that show Fix or Flop the one with Tarek Al Musa that most people know about in the the 2015 era, 16. And I was watching that show one night, and I'm there with my girlfriend at the time, and she was a part-time realtor and part-time blackjack dealer. And so like the realtor thing was her little side hustle. And she was watching that show, and she knew I had some money saved up. She goes, "Why don't you flip a house so I can list it?" And that was the first time it really it dawned on me, like, oh, maybe it seems easy enough. These guys do it in 30 minutes and they make 80 grand.
Who's doing it on TV right now? This is, by the way, the exact same thing that happens between, like, in my own head when I watch like Project Runway or something. I'm like, I think I could do this.
Right.
I feel like,
like, what's the worst to go wrong? I don't get it. Like, okay, the roof is bad. Then I pay a roofer to come out. Like, you just don't think about the things that really could go wrong because you're just not in it every day. Right. So I'm like, okay, and it's funny because the next morning I'm on my morning run and I see one of those bandit signs and it probably popped out to me because we had that discussion like before. Maybe it was always there. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I said fix and flip, buy price $250, ARV $350, something to that nature, and it had a phone number on it on this site. And I stopped at my morning run and I called that phone number. I bought that house. It took me 6 months to fix and flip it. And I made $8,000. There was my first deal.
Wow.
That was my first real estate deal I ever did. And second deal I did well. I went to some local RIAs, started meeting wholesalers, these guys called wholesalers. Like, who would have thought there was such a niche in real estate? I didn't know. And I meet these wholesalers and I buy a second deal and I make 20 grand on that one, which is really good. And then on my third deal, like a moron, I bought 4 houses all at once. I also ended up switching contractors because the last one kind of sucked anyways, but like the next one sucked even more. Because he took me to the cleaners and I lost $250,000 on those 4 houses. I lost my 401k money from the casino. I lost my life savings and I lost my previous flip money. Set me back to zero. All I had going for me is I still had my job. He took advantage of me. He saw a mark on my head. I was gullible and I was giving him a bunch of money without following up with his work. And by the time I realized it, I had to I was out of money by the time I realized it. I had to re-wholesale those properties back to the wholesaler, at a discount, and losing all my money down, all the hard money I paid on them, it was just a train wreck on those 4 houses. And so I didn't want to give up real estate. And I was still working in the casino. So thank God I still had that money coming in. But I literally went on Google and I typed in, because I wanted to know, like, you hear about these wholesalers now, they get deals and they get deals with no money. And you're hearing all this stuff when you go to these RIAs. And I type on Google, how do wholesalers get deals? and guess who popped up?
Who popped up?
Sean Terry.
All right. The Sean Terry.
Sean Terry popped up. So obviously he was doing some PPC around that, or he was doing some SEO. I'm not sure, because I don't remember to this day if it was an ad or not that I clicked on. But of course I clicked on his stuff and I went down the Sean Terry rabbit hole, his funnel. I got into his funnel and I bought his Flip to Freedom course. I, started going to his events. I joined his mastermind and everything. And so I went down that. It took me about, I don't know, it was like 10 months to get my first wholesale deal, which I sold to the wholesaler who was selling me the deals before. And once I got my first deal, it was kind of like proof of concept. And then I was kind of off to the races. Like that second deal came like 2 weeks later, the third deal. And like, it was off to the races at that point. And then, that's how I became a wholesaler.
Wow, man. First of all, Sean Terry, I'll often tell this story, but it's like when I first started doing this for investors, I think Sean Terry was like the only other investor I could find that was doing PPC. It was like him and like 2 other people, you know what I mean? It's like, he's like an OG. Sean is super smart. And so I think that's amazing. But I want to, first of all, this story is bonkers. I love that story so much because there's so many like ups and downs and like sort of things that we can dig in on. And I definitely want to make sure we spend most of the time kind of talking about what you're doing today, because you've really built this kind of incredible sort of world within real estate that I want to dive into. But okay, let's go back and let's talk about dealing blackjack for a second.
Yeah.
I am super curious. It strikes me, as you mentioned, it's kind of like being a bartender. It is really odd. And this is just, I don't really play cards, right? So this is, I don't gamble or anything. So like this kind of from the outside looking in. But to me, it's like this really weird combination of you get exposed to so many different parts of human psychology.
Oh boy.
And there's a lot of like mental sort of stuff going on, like mental math and like statistics and stuff. So I'm super curious, like, what did you take from your experience as a blackjack dealer that you still think about or apply today?
Easy.
Okay.
Yeah. Sales. My ability to talk to people, and even when the situation is shitty, to still add a positive light to the situation and talk to people in a very positive manner, and sales in general. Because in blackjack dealing, what you're doing all day long is taking people's livelihood away.
Yeah.
Like you're taking their mortgage money, you're taking their kids' college funds, you're taking their food and gas money. I mean, these people, most of them, not all, but most have really bad addictions to the gambling and the casino lifestyle. And it's a very dark lifestyle, even though the money's great. So you have to go out there and put your best show on in the middle of a kind of a shitstorm and the most negative, toxic environment with these people, where you're taking their money and you still have to like put the show on and get them to tip you and get them to still want to give you money. And I was very good at that. I was able to get them. I was one of the number one blackjack dealers in my casino. I was able to go out there and make the crap ton every single night by putting on the best show and by celebrating when they win and basically changing the conversation to something else when they're losing. So you want to focus on the wins. When they're winning and they're making money, focus on the gambling at that moment. As soon as they goes for a turn and they start losing, you want to shift the conversation to something else. And then this is where it gets, you need to know them personally. You need to know them on a deeper level to know where to shift the conversation to. And I got really good at that throughout my dealing career, because I used to go there to make money. That was my job. And it's funny how a lot of dealers, they don't look at it that way. 99% of dealers are going in there and they hate their lives, they hate their job, and they're just going in there trying to make $1. But when they're out there, they're not showing it, right? And it's funny because I'm like, man, I'm here to make money, and I'm going to learn how to do this job well so I can make money. And it sells. It's obviously sells. And so that transpired over to real estate, because it gave me the capability in the beginning to connect with sellers when they were having shitty situations and they were going through a bad time in their life. And so I was able to connect with them on a deeper level because of that experience. And then also now, just as a business owner, high-level business owner, and owning many different type of companies, dealing, with different issues in the businesses, dealing with employees, dealing with, people trying to sue you, whatever it may be, all that skill set has transferred over, all of it, the whole entire thing. So it's given me great people skills, because I didn't have those people skills, I feel like, before I was a blackjack dealer. And I was a dealer for 16 years. I mean, it took me, I was there for a long time. I did that job.
So that's a career, essentially.
It was a careir, yeah. Because I used to work 6 hours a night, making over 6 figures a year, and I was like, why am I going to do anything else?
Yeah.
And until like one day I finally woke up and I was like, man, I want more out of life.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
Well, let's talk about that, because that was kind of my next question. We laughed about the watching the TV, and I've watched I always say, like, having watched 10 hours of the Great British Baking Show, I can now bake a cake. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like I got it, right?
Right. You probably still messed it up.
Yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't come out well. Don't get me wrong, right? But I could judge other people's cakes. Maybe that's putting it a different way. But and we kind of laugh about that. But the vast majority of people, myself included, right, we have that feeling when we watch the thing, but we don't take the next step. And you had a thing, like you said, that was going really well. And I know like your girlfriend at the time was like, hey, you do it so I can list something. But there's clearly a part of you that was very comfortable taking very fast action, taking a first step without, like really, it's not like you bought 40 books and spent 6 months learning about it, right? You kind of jumped into it. So is that,
I wish I would have.
Part of your personality? Yeah, is that still part of your personality? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm a very fast action taker. I have a very high risk tolerance, I would say. And so yeah, I've always been that way in my life. I've been risky with a lot of different things. I mean, for example, I was heavy into drugs and alcohol, for a long time. That's a big risk if you ask me. Yeah, I'm sober now. I'm no longer in any drugs or alcohol anymore. I've been sober now of everything for over 3 years. Wow. But there was a time in my life where it's like, so anything risky, it never scared me. You know what I mean? I've even done some very, fast action type sports. I love like snow skiing. I've been snow skiing my whole life, and I can ski, going 70 miles an hour down a hill. I love it. I love the rush. I'm an adrenaline junkie. And part of that, there's a good part and there's a bad part. The good part is that I shoot first, then aim, but then so I'm taking action and I'm getting it done. But the bad part is that when I'm shooting, I'm hitting like the guy off to my left, and it's like I'm missing the mark altogether, and like I'm in trouble. Like I'm in deep trouble now. And so and I do this time and time again. And I've done it every single time I've gone into new business ventures. Especially with business ventures, that's the worst. I wish I would just slow down a little bit and be like, oh, okay, let's hire a mentor. Let's read some books. Let's join a mastermind first and try to understand what some of the mistakes that some of the guys who've already done this, and try to learn that way instead of just jumping right into the deep end of the pool and then drowning a little bit before I learn to swim. And I've always been that way. And so, yeah. So I jumped in, and I just in my head I was like, man, these guys on TV can do it. I can do it. I don't see why I can't do it. They're doing it. I just got to go out there and take the risk. Yeah, not knowing that there was a huge learning curve behind it.
Well, yeah, and it's funny, right? Because in some ways, you mentioned like if the roof is bad, I'll just call the roof guy. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't really, there's right, because you kind of don't know the 1,000,001 things that could go wrong. It's really like the only reason you're able to take action, right? Like my wife and I always say, if we knew what having our first kid was going to be like, we might not have had a first kid, right? You kind of got to go into it being a little stupid. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the whole point. But the thing that I'm curious about you is like, I know you said like, oh, I've always been this way. I take a lot of risk. But it's clearly not just that, because you also went through this moment where, like you said, you lost everything. Well, you lost everything, right? You wiped out your savings, and you still stuck with it, right? Because I think I've seen people with a really high risk tolerance, but they also tend to bounce off things if they don't work. You really stuck with it, and you stuck with it for really. I mean, that wasn't like a 6-month period. That was a long period of time. So, like, why? And where do you think that piece comes from? Because I just imagine myself in that situation. And I think I would have gotten totally thrown off the horse. You know what I mean?
It sucks. Oh, it sucked. I had some dark nights during that moment of my life. I was, drinking extremely heavy to try to help mitigate the thoughts in my head. Right? It's like it was very dark for me during that time, and it's tough because the one good thing I have going for me is I'm very stubborn, and like if I'm determined to do something, I'm going to freaking do it, and like I'm not gonna let anything stop me. And I knew the only way I was going to get that money back was if I pushed forward. If I had laid down and died and just like, okay, that's it, I'm not doing this, I'm gonna go deal cards at the casino for the rest of my life, I lost that money forever. It's gone forever. So I knew the only way, and I knew that deep down inside, the only way I was going to ever try to get a chance of getting this money back from this industry is if I pursued it and went deeper into it, and I became successful in this industry, was the only way. And thank God I did, because I made that money back multiple times over again. But it's just still, I'm a very stubborn guy, and I've done it, every time I do a new business and I get my head cracked open from the business, it's like I want to I double down, and I want to learn how to do it. I want to pursue it, and that's usually when I hire mentors or go through a mastermind. It was the same when I first met you. When I first met you, I met you is because I was going through a pain. I had put a bunch of money into PPC and it wasn't working. And that was once again me doing something without learning about it first, taking that because I'm very high risk tolerant. I'm like, oh, let's just do it. Let's just do it. And I threw all this money in there and it was not producing anything for me. And then I'm like, well, crap. Maybe I should find somebody who's good at this.
Yeah. It's like,
and so I do it every time and time again in my life. I do this. And it's like,
well, I think it's cool, man. I mean, I think I completely understand where you're coming from because I can imagine the whole getting your head cracked open thing is not pleasant, right? So it doesn't feel good. But I think the flip side of that is most people are so worried about getting their head cracked open, they never start.
Yeah.
Or they never get started to begin with, right? So it's like, you might get your head cracked, but you heal up and then you just keep going. And like everybody else is still back at the starting line, being like, I don't know, you know what I mean? All right. So, okay. So we're sort of caught up to the kind of this moment where you're a successful wholesaler. You're getting deals. You're kind of putting it all together. I'm curious, where do Novations come in? So we mentioned this at the top, right? NovationNation.com is the website you're currently kind of doing a bunch of your work at. Everybody should go check it out. If you have never seen it before, go check out what Corey's got there. But for people who aren't really familiar with what Novations are, how did that make its way into your business? Like, kind of tell us the story of how you started to add that to your sort of portfolio of what you do.
It was a solution to a problem I was having. And so once again, I did something in the business. I made a very rational move in the business, a pivot in the business that ended up causing more problems than what it was worth at the time. Was when I was local here doing about, anywhere from 8 to 10 deals a month. It was pretty decent, right? Like 10 deals a month is amazing in a local market. And I mean, where I had very little overhead. I mean, I had some overhead, but doing pretty good for myself. And I even started doing some fix and flips, and I was actually making money doing fix and flips. I was making money doing fix and flips, and I was learning the business. And it was, it had its headaches, but it still, I was being, I had a taste of success from it. And then I'm going to these masterminds, and I'm still following Sean. And there's another guy who's a good friend of mine. His name is Nick Perry. And, and these guys are talking about going nationwide. Let's go nationwide. I'm like, okay, let's go nationwide. This is the way to scale your business. Of course, I drink the Kool-Aid like I always do. And I literally come into my office one day, and I recommend your viewers never do this. If you have a local business model, do not do this. I went in and turned off all my local marketing and turned on nationwide PPC, and was like, okay, guys, we're a nationwide company now. Let's go get it. And without any training on comps, because I didn't know how to comp nationwide. So how am I going to train it? We didn't have any buyers nationwide, because how would I have any buyers? I've never worked in these markets before. The only thing we were good at is maybe some sales processes, and that's about it. I mean, and our in-house processes as far as the way we do stuff was pretty good, but that was it. And so literally, man, the first month I ran deep in the red. I ran in the red 3 months, very deep in the red after I made that switch. And I'm in a local not a local mastermind. It was a mastermind in Florida, actually. And I'm out there in a mastermind in Florida, and there was a guy who was doing a presentation. This is, guys, if you're not masterminds, join masterminds. It's the best thing I've ever did in my whole journey in this space, bar none. Mm-hmm. And mentorship too. So I was in this mastermind, and going through this pain at this moment, and this guy does a presentation, and he's talking about how he in the local market he was in, which was down there in the Miami area. He did $2.2 million last year, and half of that was this thing he called Novations. And I'm like, what the heck is a Novation? And he goes on to talk about how he's listing these properties on the MLS for conventional financed buyers. And I was like, what? We could do something like we could list it on the MLS for conventional buyers. So a light bulb went on, and I knew if I could crack that code, it was the solution to my problem that I was having, because I was nationwide getting all these contracts, I had no buyers whatsoever. So like maybe 1 out of every 5 would close. And I'm like, man, if I could figure out how to just sell these properties to conventional buyers nationwide, game over.
Yeah.
And so I went on a mission. I learned his strategy. His strategy was a little dated, and I didn't like some of the techniques. And some of the other gurus teach this old way of doing novations, and I didn't like it. I did it at first. It has a lot of liability, and by liability meaning if you were to end up in a court of law, you can get in trouble. That's, for example, if you use a power of attorney, it's a lot of liability. If you're collecting seller's proceeds, it's a lot of liability, and if you're signing the deed, it's a lot of liability on you as a business owner. And so I paid my attorney, like, I don't know, it was like 15 grand, maybe a little less, between 10 and 15 to basically redraft the whole idea. And he built, I mean, I didn't really build it. He did it because I'm not an attorney. He built Novation Nation. And Novation Nation is where we could do nationwide novations with the least amount of liability as possible. And the best way to think of it is wholesaling without taking possession. And that's how we treat it, is wholesaling without taking possession. And so we really turned the gas on in the end of 2021, where we were kind of doing it in the beginning of 21, but ended up making like a full switch over in the middle to the end of 2021. And we were a novation company first, wholesale second. So I wanted every contract to be novations. I'm like, I'm done with this wholesaling thing. I hate wholesaling. I hate lying to the seller. I hate lying to the buyer. I hate all the gray. Let's do everything novations. And we did that the end of 2021. And 2022, I felt like, so novations saved my company twice. It saved my company initially when I went first nationwide because I thought it was a cool thing to do. It saved me then. And then it saved me, I feel like, in the turmoil that we just went through in 2022 with, the cash buyers kind of drying up. Everyone was experiencing their wholesaling business kind of like not working out too well. I killed it in 2022. I killed it in novations because I was selling to retail. I was selling to retail buyer. I didn't need cash buyers. I'm like, I don't care. Like sometimes my houses are a little bit like, but my price is adjusted accordingly. So like, I'm not selling, a 200,000 ARV house for, if I get it locked up at 150 and the true value is 150, that's what I'm going to sell it for, So it's, I have to get it locked up at 130 then, but yeah, you get the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, so like literally in 2022, I think I might've done 3 to 5 wholesale deals the whole year. The rest was novations. And at my peak, we were doing 60 novation deals about a time. I think the most that's ever been on my board was 68 deals.
Wow.
At my peak.
Holy moly.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed part 1 of this episode. It's just too good to limit to one show. Join us next week to hear the rest.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.